welcome to the What If podcast, where we reimagine our being and our life conditions. Today I'm joined by Belinda Chaora. Belinda, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. And my name is Nontsikelelo Nzula. Today we are going to be talking about financial inclusion. What is it? Why is it important? Who is involved in this financial inclusion? So before I get into that, Belinda is kind of a well-renowned author, I'll call you that for now, around this topic. Belinda, can you tell us about the work that you've done around financial inclusion?
Okay, so over the last few years, I work for Civil Institute, as you know. So over the last few years, we've been doing a lot of research on financial inclusion, primarily targeting small businesses, trying to understand how much access do they have to financial products and services. So in 2020, 2021, 2022, we did a nationwide study in Zimbabwe looking at financial inclusion across the country in all the 10 provinces. We've just recently finished another big study in Malawi, Kenya, and Zambia, a 3-country study, also looking at small businesses and the level of financial inclusion. So outside of these studies, we also do, we've written up a few pieces, articles, blogs, that sort of thing, mapping out the space, the financial inclusion space in sub-Saharan Africa. So not just me, of course, as you know, there's a number of people, who do the same thing at Civio, but one of the people
you've been heading it.
Well, not necessarily heading it, but let's just say I'm in there. Yeah.
All right, great.
Okay. So that gives you an overview of kind of the work that we've done and what we are doing and where we want to go. Yeah.
Lovely. I think you've put that very well. So for someone who has never interacted with this term financial inclusion, could you just break it down for us? What is financial inclusion?
So financial inclusion is really the level of access that we have to financial products and services. Some people will go further to say these products must be affordable and these products must be available in a dignified way. So how I access those products must be available to me in a way that affords me the dignity that I deserve as a human being. So because it's very easy to give someone money, but you demean them in the process. So financial inclusion ideally is the level of access that we have to financial products, services. And when we're talking about financial products and services, we're talking about usually where your money is, where you put your money, how your money moves, where you invest it, where you keep it, do you save it, do you put it with a friend, do you buy something with it? That whole process is where financial inclusion is. Do you have access to those processes, that channel, that movement of money? Do you have access to that? And what we found is that some countries, so for example, Zimbabwe, will actually say access to formal financial products and services. And those are, when you say formal, now you're talking about your products and services that are regulated by the government or a delegated authority from the government. So the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe in this case. Some countries will just differentiate to say, yes, there's a formal inclusion, there's your informal inclusion, and then there's people who are excluded. So it's an interesting space, and it's very important to have an understanding of financial inclusion when you're talking about development, because the amount of access that you have to money and the products and services that stem from the movement of money will determine what opportunities are afforded to you as a young woman, if you're in business, or as a young person, whether you want to go to school or to start a business, buy a home, invest in something. How much access you have determines the opportunities that are afforded to you. And by consequence, the level of developments that country is then going to engage in is determined by financial inclusion.
Lovely. So how did you get into this financial inclusion space? Is it something that you've always known about and you wanted to get involved in? Or did you accidentally find yourself there?
Accidentally. Not really. I think my major interest is on business, small business. And we do a lot of work at Civio on understanding micro, small and medium enterprises. Those are what you call your MSMEs. So we've done a lot of research around them. We also do trainings of micro, small and medium enterprises at Civil Institute. And so when you are mapping out what's happening with small businesses, the main thing that a business needs is financing. at different stages. So whether you need startup financing, you need capital to grow your business. When you make the money, where are you putting it? Are you investing it? How much knowledge do you have around how your business runs? Never mind whether it comes to budgeting, what are your costs, your capital costs, your running costs, all of that stuff. That's where money is happening, and even when you're talking about financial inclusion as a country, you then also start to talk about the money that's being made within that country, and then where does that money go? So that for me is where my interest started when I'm talking about financial inclusion. Really, the interest was in the nature of small business and the kind of support systems that we have. And so their level of access to financing becomes key, because that's how a business starts and that's how a business survives. How much money do they have? How much money do they make? But most importantly, what do they do with the money that they have? How do they safeguard it? How do they invest it? How do they keep it? How do they transact with it? Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say is the lay of the land currently? Because you mentioned that you did a study in Zambia, in Kenya, in Malawi, and in Zimbabwe. How would you describe where we are, I guess, as a country, and also looking at the different countries that I've mentioned? Where are we?
So I'll take Sub-Saharan Africa as a collective and just give general figures here. So when you're looking at financial inclusion in the rest of the world, firstly, probably the rest of the world is probably between 65 to maybe like 75%. Roughly, let's call it 70% of the rest of the world is considered included. Well, not the rest of the world, sorry, developed countries. 70% of developed countries will be considered included. But when you look at Sub-Saharan Africa, and there's other developing countries, that are not necessarily in Africa. So when you're looking at some countries in Asia, some countries in South America, there's a number of countries that would also fall into similar percentages. But in Sub-Saharan Africa, I would say we're at like a 50-50 status,
We're halfway there.
We're halfway there, but it depends on what exactly you want to measure. But if you look at the most basic metric of financial inclusion, which is access to bank accounts, in 2017, about 43% of Africans had access to bank accounts. In 2021, that number rose to about 55%. I'm sure there has been some increase since then, but not much, obviously because COVID affected a lot of things. But in some cases, the numbers grew quite a lot because of COVID. So COVID kind of had positive, negative, metrics, depending on which country you're in and what was going on there. But roughly, I would say we're like kind of 55% of the African continent has access to bank accounts.
All right.
Yeah.
Can I just put a little question in there? When you talk about access to bank accounts, does that also equal to utilization of bank accounts?
Right. So people use bank accounts differently, So if you then go into the research that we've done in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Kenya, Malawi, people use bank accounts very differently. Some people will use it once a month. You go get your salary, you take everything out. Then there's other people who use it once a week, making a payment here and there, receiving money. There's other people who use it every day. Maybe it's a small business or a medium business. They'll use it regularly. So it just kind of depends on the product itself and the person who's using the accounts. You don't expect a pensioner to use their bank account every day, but you would probably expect a family to have access to that bank account at least a couple of times a week, So it kind of just depends on the people, the individuals that are accessing the accounts, what they're using it for, where their station in life is, I think when you're looking at inclusion, what the most important thing is, do you have the access? But over and above access is other metrics. So when access is the most basic. Importantly, like what you're referring to is usage. So access, usage, and then the barriers that then come from your use or the access of those financial products and services.
I'm going to stop you there so that you don't jump into my next question,
Okay.
right? You're talking about barriers. You've laid the land. You're saying that the sub-Saharan Africa, well, sub-Saharan Africa is 50% there. What are the challenges that we are facing currently for sub-Saharan Africa? And let's also talk about Kenya as well, because it was part of the study. What is it that is stopping us from reaching the 100% that we're aiming for? What are the challenges that we have currently?
Well, when you look at bank account access, we are very far behind. But when you're looking at some things, and I think this is something that is a big promoter of financial inclusion, especially for Africa, and I'm sure a lot of other developing countries, is access to the digital space. So the internet has changed the game a lot when it's talking about financial inclusion. If you add access to mobile money or access to digital financial products and services, that has changed a lot and provided access that was not there previously. So, for example, in Zimbabwe, I think we are probably at 90, almost 90% mobile penetration rate. So anybody with access to a mobile phone will have the opportunity to have access to a mobile money product which they can use, and it's at their disposal if they choose to use it. We've generally found that most people with access to a mobile phone will have access to mobile money, and mobile money rates have increased exponentially across the continent. Kenya, for example, I think they're probably in the 80% of access to mobile money. So if you take that as a metric of financial inclusion, the game has changed a lot. But mobile money on its own is insufficient. Especially when you're looking at the health of a business or the health of a family, you can't have the full breadth of access to financial products and services simply based on access to mobile money. Although the products and the services that are being provided for on a mobile platform are increasing daily, weekly, So you can access some type of insurance, you can access some type of investment facility, you can save your money on it, that sort of thing. But there's a full level of access as well that kind of translates across access to a phone or mobile money. So when you now want to put all of these things into a bracket, and I think that's the research that we were doing, trying to find what is the access that, especially small businesses for us, because that's our area of interest, what access do small businesses have to not just traditional financial products and services, but also the digital financial products and services. What we found was very interesting in that although Kenya is high on mobile money, and mobile network penetration because of because of what M-Pesa and a few other mobile network operators have done. When you're looking at other digital products and services, other digital payments, digital investments, capital raising, even on a digital platform, Kenya doesn't score as high.
Maybe let's expand on that a little bit. What do you mean other digital services?
So there's other things that you can do because of the advent of the internet. So for example, you can crowdfund for your business. You can access things without wanting to, but there's things like Google Pay, Apple Pay, PayPal, all of these things that you can use with your business. There's e-commerce platforms and sites where you can set up a website and have a shopping basket on your website. Set up a website for your business and then have money available online. Some banks called neobanks, digital banks without a physical presence, you can access all of that online. Kenya doesn't score as highly. The level of access is not the same, and it's not that that's a problem. I think it's only a problem when you try to understand where Africa is in comparison to the rest of the world. When we did the study, we were trying to map out, and kind of with a forecasting lens, how ready is Africa for the fourth industrial revolution? How ready is Africa for a revolution that's happening in the digital space? We have done a lot in financial inclusion. When you look at access to mobile money, we've done a lot to give people access to bank accounts. and we are, growing in leaps and bounds. But we seem to have kind of neglected that the financial inclusion revolution itself has already started to transcend traditional financial products and services. We've already moved into the digital space. A lot of other countries have moved far into the digital space. One of the things that we noted, for example, just as one of the metrics, cryptocurrency. Most African countries have banned or disallowed the use of cryptocurrency. Yes, they might be talking about it. Okay, how do we do it? How should it be used? And that's one of the
rightfully so, don't you think? Because yes, how do you allow it if you don't know how to regulate it?
Yes, but we need to move quickly. We don't have the luxury of sitting around and can you imagine if we have another pandemic? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
So if we have another COVID pandemic or another pandemic of any kind, another disaster that shuts down the world like what COVID did, how ready would we be? More importantly, how ready would our small businesses be for the digital space? So I think that's the kind of lens that we were looking at to say, yes, financial inclusion is important. Africa has done a lot. Many countries on the African continent, probably more than half, have financial inclusion strategies. And so we're ticking the boxes. So Zimbabwe has done well amongst many other countries, ticking the boxes on traditional financial products and services available through a bank, a microfinance institution, or something similar. But we seem to be neglecting that we now need to take it a step further. The digital space is there, it's moving. Other countries are taking huge chunks of that space. And we need to move quickly as well, not just as individual countries, but as an African bloc, to take over that space in a way that works best for our citizens and also for small businesses in the African context as well.
I'm tempted to delve into the juxtaposition of digital access outside mobile money. You spoke about online shopping and, setting up your websites and making sure people can shop online, but versus the physical infrastructure. Because as it is in Zimbabwe, yes, we are there online, but can we back up the online presence with good customer service or even working with our banks? We are not going to get into our banks. And the issues that we have. Are those things not aligned? Can we move fast knowing that the back end of our stuff is not together?
So, like I said, financial inclusion, you're talking about access, you're talking about usage, you're talking about barriers, What you're talking about are the barriers. And in the research that we've done, we found that trust in the system is a big barrier. Affordability of the products, the services is a big barrier. And then, so now when you take those two, another big barrier is the level of knowledge that people have about financial products and services.
Can I just stop over there?
Let's answer the first question.
Okay. No, go ahead. You had spoken about the barriers, and I'm just going to regurgitate what you said. You said one of them is trust.
Yeah.
Another one is affordability and knowledge.
And then knowledge of the products and how to use them.
How to use them. Okay, you continuously refer to the idea of services and products. Can you differentiate those two things?
So the way I see services is kind of the interface that a provider will have with a product. So whether it's with a human being or even with some form of artificial intelligence, whether it's a chatbot of some sort, when I want to access your product, what is that process like? What are the systems that you've put in place for me to access that facility? How quickly do you move? Do you turn around? So how long does it take for my money to move? How long does it take for me to get to my desired end product? So that could be me interfacing with a person, some form of personnel, or it could be me interacting with a chatbot. A lot of people have that now. I can type
on
this,
WhatsApp
press this,
especially.
01, Chakuti, and then, I get at the end of the day, I've made my payment. But then when you are now talking about products, for me, that is the actual facility, the actual system that's available, the suite of goods that you've put together. A good example would be, for example, a funeral policy. Another one could be an investment package. What are the percentage rates increase that I'm going to get, or interest that I'm going to get on my money when I bring it to you. If it's a funeral policy, how much money do I need to put in, for how often, and what do I get at the end of the day? That's a product that you're making available to me. So when that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying financial products and services, maybe one of the listeners will have a better definition. But just to kind of break it down, just
to bring your definitions in,
to bring it closer to home. That's what I'm talking about. So now, when you're talking about trust, for people in Zimbabwe, we understand.
We understand the issue around trust. You see, is your money in the bank?
We're about to have a structured. Don't forget the word structured. Structured currency coming out soon. What does that mean? Do you understand? So people are already feeling uncertain. People are already uneasy. People are already thinking, should I take my money out of the bank? Because we've had many instances previously where I had money in the bank and it just wiped out overnight. I had money in the system somewhere. I had an investment package. I have parents, relatives who lost lots of money. They could have bought multiple homes, but their money deteriorated overnight. I know, for example, I had an insurance product. I won't mention the name of the organization, but I know you. I've got them written down somewhere. And I had applied. I started making payments. The currency changed, and the product lost value. And halfway through, before it was completely valueless, I wanted to get whatever I could salvage out. And the agent just kept disappearing on me. They ghosted me. The organization itself just kept telling me stories, and it wore me out. I just didn't have the time to keep going because the money was now almost worth nothing. So I've lost trust in that company. You can sing for a lot of people. You can sing from here to town about how I should go back. I probably won't. So that's loss of trust. And affordability is really what you're talking about. How affordable are those products? Is it easy to access based on the cost? Those are all barriers that affect my level of inclusion and Jules as well.
I would love to delve a little more into the trust issues, but I think most of us have gone through that. With all the knowledge and information that you've gathered in your research, could you just quickly give us recommendations? What can we do better? Who should do better? What can we do to improve our state of financial inclusion?
So I think for individuals, I would say, look, there's products and services out there that will literally change your life. Access to investment portfolios, access to ways of saving money, access to ways even of interacting with your if you have a business, or if you as an individual making payments. There's different ways that you can do that now. A lot of banks even have applications that make it easy for you to transact based on the account that you have with them. Not everybody is exploring what those can do, the convenience that those things can bring. And I know a lot of people want to go and make the transaction in the bank. I have to be there and sign the paper, and it's good, but from a productive perspective, there's a lot of time that you waste, even when you go into the bank. And you don't always factor in the cost of your time. So if you factor in the cost of your time, go digital. Do you know what I mean? Get an application.
Even the cost of transport, going all the way to the bank instead of buying your data and doing it from the comfort of your home.
Exactly. For a small business, I would say same thing. There's a lot of applications, a lot of products that make business much easier, especially when you're looking at digital products and services. And it expands your horizon. The people who are able to buy from you are no longer just your people within your circle. Once you go digital, the world is your oyster. You then have access to so much more. But the digital space is not an easy space to regulate. You need to inform yourself. What happens if I go onto this website? If I click on this link that I'm not aware of, what does that mean? So security becomes a big issue, especially if you're in business or even as an individual. You could lose a lot of money. So information becomes important. Take it upon yourself to inform yourself. But that also applies even to governments or people who are stewarding groups of small businesses or individuals with anything to do with finances. Information is key. So not only do we need information when we are interacting with financial products and services traditionally, but we need to have more information and robust information when we're looking at digital access and digital security, especially because that's where the world is moving or has moved. And for us to navigate that space, we need to be informed. So a lot of our small businesses need that information, they need that training, and the onus is upon the government that's wanting to give them money, the organizations that want to provide them money. Just be aware that the people that you might be giving money to are not fully aware of the space that they need to interact in. So information is very important. And I think the last group of people I'll probably direct to is sort of like your developers of products and services, especially when you're looking at your banks, your microfinance institutions, your fintech companies. The African landscape is very different. A lot of our communities are still in the rural space.
70% of them, is it not?
You see now, yeah. Exactly. So we need to do a bit more research beyond just mobile money, to say, how do we make these products compatible with the needs that they have? And in that community, young people have different needs. Women who've been traditionally excluded have different needs. So a lot of time, effort, and energy needs to be invested into finding out what each of these different groups need.
How can we cater to them?
How can we cater to them?
Yeah.
And how do they interact with those products and those services? What are their preferences? So that kind of energy takes a lot of money and a lot of investment, obviously, but it's not impossible, because the way we might interact with the product is very different to how someone in China might interact with it. So
based on their
that investment
well.
is happening, but it's more can be done. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Belinda. Guys, let's get informed. Belinda has told us about some of the challenges that we have. And the biggest one is around information. Do you know your business well? At CVO, we have training, so look out for our trainings at cvo.org. And maybe if this was your first time, please subscribe and follow. And we will see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for taking time to listen. Please feel free to rate and review us on iTunes. But if you have any comments or questions, please send them to my email, tendai.murisa@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter. My handle is @tmurisa. Thank you again.